Hence the shouting, screaming in a weird voice. All right, fun, exciting show. First, I'm gonna go rail for the first segment. Yeah, I think you're gonna enjoy that. A lot of things have got me worked up. Then Johnny Pie comes in, and then after that, Anna comes in. We've got a cavalcade of stars here. One of the stories you shouldn't miss is what is happening in Myanmar. It is past time that we cover it. We covered it a little bit before, but now it's flared up again. And of course, in between all the Trump tweets, nobody else is giving it any coverage. And so we got to do our part here. It is amazing. It is unfortunately horrible, but it is very important for the world. And then a football star gets detained and has an interesting wake-up moment. He's a good guy. But what happened to him is also amazing, also terrible, and also instructive. That's what we do on the program. Terrible but instructive. That's what a lot of the news is. Having said that, speaking of which, let's go to John Kelly. Okay. I like how Jesus knows I'm teeing it up. All right. Fascinating story out of the New York Times, also a little bit from the Daily Beast in this reporting as well. It is about how John Kelly, the chief of staff for Donald Trump, is trying to corral him. Now, I made a prediction earlier that John Kelly would not last, just as everybody in the mainstream media was gushing about how his chin was so square, his jaw so solid, hence all of this is going to work. Well, the news out now is actually mixed. Some of it did work. So credit where credit is due, I'll get to that. And he has done some great things. And at the same time, Trump is chafing because he's a child. These are my favorite stories. So without further ado, let's go to Glenn Thrush and Maggie Haberman at the New York Times. President Trump was in an especially ordinary mood, that sounds like him, after staff members gently suggested he refrain from injecting politics into day-to-day issues of governing after last month's raucous rally in Arizona, and he responded by lashing out at the most senior aide in his presence. It happened to be his new chief of staff, John F. Kelly. Okay, a little told you here, he's a man-child. Okay, it's a general, he's really well respected, he's really orderly. That's not gonna stop the man-child from getting upset and go, where's my milk and cookies? Why can't I talk about politics in the middle of a tragedy? So, Mr. Kelly, the former Marine general brought in 5 weeks ago as a successor to Reince Priebus, reacted calmly, but he later told other White House staff members that he had never been spoken to like that during 35 years of serving his country. In the future, he said he would not abide such treatment, according to 3 people familiar with the exchange. Well, okay, my prediction is he will abide it because people like power too much. On the other hand, Trump will not abide it. We asked you this poll question in an earlier segment that we did about John Kelly a couple of weeks ago, and you guys also thought the same thing, that there was about according to you guys, about a 90% chance that at some point Trump will fire Kelly. But we'll see how that goes. So far, so good, and I'm not sure I want him to be fired. In fact, that's a poll question I'm gonna ask you later. They explain, while Mr. Kelly has quickly brought some order to a disorganized and demoralized staff, he is fully aware of the president's volcanic resentment about being managed, according to a dozen people close to Mr. Trump, and has treated gingerly through the minefield of Mr. Trump's psyche. Indeed, the minefield of Mr. Trump's psyche. Look, they're not just talking to 1 or 2 people here. They've talked to a dozen people inside the White House. And this is the same reaction we got when we had a whole different cast of characters in the White House. Everybody says the same thing because it's true. Donald Trump has a very thin skin. He doesn't like to be told what to do. He has temper tantrums. Everything, look, I don't even want to, again, I feel like I'm belittling kids too much, but it's what a moody kid, let's just call it that way, does, right? So, yeah, you have to say it now, Mr. Trump, you're wonderful and great and gracious and wonderful. But can I just say, maybe in the middle of doing Hurricane Harvey, empathizing, you shouldn't talk about your crowd size. How dare you? Where's my milk and cookies? This is the man-child in charge of the country. God help us all. The president has still bridled at what he perceives as being told what to do. It's a very, very common theme. Look, guys, if people are trying to manipulate you, that's annoying. And there are instances when people play politics inside of a company and obviously inside the government, and you can sniff that out and put an end to it. That's perfectly fair and a good thing, a positive thing. But when someone earnestly tells you, hey, here's my honest advice about what I think you should do, that would be helpful to you, to our party, to our policy priorities, to the country. You can't go, hey, don't tell me what to do. Well, it depends, dude. Do they have your best interest in mind? Don't they? Do they have the country's best interest in mind? And don't they? Are they right or are they wrong? You can't just, every time somebody gives you advice, you can't flip out and go nuclear like an idiot. Well, that would require you not to be an idiot, and that's where we run into the problem. All right, so more on this front, and here comes the turn. Like every other new sheriff in town, Mr. Trump has hired to turn things around at the White House or in his presidential campaign. Mr. Kelly has gradually diminished in his appeal to his restless boss. So, and the reason it goes like this is that first he hires someone like Paul Manafort, who was his former campaign manager, and the guy looks slick and he's got a nice suit and he's been a lobbyist for a long time and he worked in a lot of presidential campaigns. He's like, okay, good, this is a successful person, I like this guy. And then Manafort says, hey, can you stop being such a schmuck? But of course, in very political terms, says to not offend him, Mr. Trump, you are so brilliant, but could you please do this instead of that? And he's like, how dare you? And now in John Kelly's case, General, he looks up to the generals. That's why he's got Jim Mattis as defense secretary. He's got McMaster at National Security Council, and he's got Kelly as his chief of staff. General's successful, rich people good, general's good. Everyone else sucks, I don't want him in my government. But after a while, he realizes, this is a person who's smart and trying to give me good advice, therefore I hate him. So more details. The question now is how long Mr. Kelly will stay with estimates ranging from a month to a year at most. How many times can I say told you? All right, but it hasn't happened yet, so let's see how it goes. Mr. Trump, who has said that he has surrounded himself with former military men from, quote, central casting, respects Mr. Kelly, aides said. But again, just like I said, says he says that that's a quote from Trump. These generals look like they're from central casting. That would be great for a reality show. For actually running the country, I mean, we're lucky it looks like Kelly is actually organized, but central casting shouldn't have anything to do with it. How they look shouldn't have anything to do with it, but Trump has said this on dozens of occasions. He doesn't like people who don't look like they should have the role. Even though Mitt Romney had gone after him very aggressively during the campaign, he still considered him for Secretary of State, and it wasn't a fake consideration, according to inside sources, because they said Trump thought he looked like a Secretary of State. All right, anyway, so we got lucky that Kelly actually does fit the role that he was cast for. It appears, because you're gonna see some good news in a second. Okay, the president for his part has marveled at the installation of management controls that would have been considered routine in any other White House. He says, quote, I now have time to think, a surprised Mr. Trump has told one of his senior aides repeatedly over the last few weeks. Yeah, if idiots and madmen like Steve Bannon and Omarosa, you're gonna see in a second, all these people don't just burst into your room and go, I got a great idea, let's hate these people, right? You might actually, and you do things in an orderly way, you might have time in your schedule to think. Now, once again, God help us on what he's thinking. I don't know that we want Trump thinking a lot, and that would be a fascinating problem. I'd love to sit in the room and see, anybody got pictures? Anybody want to turn on Fox? Right? But okay, good, order is good. Mr. Kelly cannot stop Mr. Trump from binge watching Fox, of course, from binge watching Fox News, which aides describe as the president's primary source of information gathering. For the third time, God help us all. I mean, at a minimum, even if you're on that side, you've got to be cognizant that Fox News is doing perspective reporting. And again, I know he's not cognizant of this, and even if he was, he wouldn't care. Their so-called reporting is not even perspective reporting. We've reported 100 times about internal memos from Fox News where management tells the anchors what to say based on political grounds. Hey, pretend Hamas is celebrating democratic victories. Pretend this is happening, pretend that is happening. But even if you get past that, he was looking at Fox and Friends and Hand, these are all opinion shows. And he sees it, he's like, yeah, it was a fact. Steve Doocy said it, how could it be wrong? Okay. So now, the really good news about John Kelly is that he has kept most of the crazies out. So let's give you details on that. Now, Mr. Kelly, this is still the New York Times. Now, Mr. Kelly has thinned out his package of printouts so much that Mr. Trump plaintively asked a friend recently where the Daily Caller and Breitbart were. Mr. Kelly has told his staff time and time again that his goal is to rationalize the chaos that has engulfed the management of the West Wing. Managing Mr. Trump is beyond his or anyone else's powers, he has said repeatedly. In other words, throwing his hand up going, I'm trying, brother. Okay, now if you don't know, the envelope he used to get, usually prepared by Steve Bannon acolytes, would be filled with right-wing propaganda from sites like Breitbart. Of course, that's the one that Steve Bannon used to run and now runs again. And so they'd put that in front of him like, oh my God, immigrants are dirty and terrible and you should ban them all. And he'd be like, I found a fact. It says here on Breitbart that immigrants are terrible, we should ban them, right? But think about what a child he is, that he doesn't even know they were playing that game and that they were putting that folder in front of him. And now that somebody else is playing a different game and putting a folder that doesn't have those, he's genuinely asking like, hey, what happened to Breitbart and Daily Caller? Are they not in the news anymore? No, you schmuck. Ironically, what's happening is the thing that you're worried about, which is that they're playing you. They were playing you before to be crazy. Now Kelly's playing you to be sane, thank God for that. But either way, the fact that you can't see that is so sad. If I was the president and somebody keeps putting opinion pieces in front of me with a certain agenda, I'd be like, yeah, that's all good and fine. I get it, that's like your opinion, man. But what's the actual news of today? And of course, Trump is not savvy enough to understand any of that. Jesus, man, his IQ is, I don't know that it's made the double digits. This guy is really, really dumb. Okay, so now more good news. Okay, so you got some of the extreme right-wing propaganda off the president's desk. That's good. And then you got Omarosa Manigault. Believe it or not, she is in the White House. Yes, she's a reality show star. On the other hand, so is Trump. So the stories, this is now the Daily Beast. The stories Manigault would present to Trump, often on a phone or printed out, would often enrage the president and resulted in him spending at least the rest of the day fuming about it. For example, one White House source noted that Manigault was one of the people who would bring to President Trump's attention online articles concerning MSNBC hosts and former Trump pals Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, slagging him and his administration. So, and that's what caused Trump to go nuts and say that Mika was bleeding from the face, which got him into more trouble. Omarosa's whole point in the reality shows that she was in was to cause trouble and chaos. That's why she was an interesting character on TV. She would love to pit people against each other and create drama. If you're running a reality show, perfect. She's exactly the kind of character that you would cast. If you're running a White House and she's doing it to the president, that's a profoundly bad idea. And then he's so stupid he doesn't realize, and he's like, oh my God, is somebody saying something bad about me? Oh, Omarosa, thank you for creating this drama. Oh yeah. So Kelly's like, no, you're gone. No, you're banned. You're not. If you're going to go into the office, you have to ask my permission. And she's, oh my God, she's talking to a camera as we speak. You know, like the shots that they do in a room by herself. I can't believe General Kelly did this to me. He is so outrageous. Okay, now one more on Omarosa. Unnamed Trump administration source says, when General Kelly is talking about clamping down on access to the Oval, she's patient zero. So she's the one causing the most amount of problems. Again, given her track record on TV, that's not surprising. Now, another guy with a lot of problems is Sheriff Clark. He's the guy who recently quit in Milwaukee. And there I have great news on behalf of John Kelly. Sheriff David A. Clark just lost out on yet another Trump administration job, and he has the president's chief of staff to thank. We actually all have the president's chief of staff to thank on that. Sheriff Clark is a lunatic. 4 sources working in and close to the Trump White House said his failure to land a gig in the West Wing or the Department of Homeland Security, where Clark unsuccessfully sought a job earlier this year, was in large part the result of opposition from White House Chief of Staff John Kelly. Kelly led the Department of Homeland Security until late July. At Department of Homeland Security, Kelly had personally shot down an idea supported by some officials in the Trump White House to have immigration ultra-hardliner Chris Kobach as a Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security. So these are all really good news. Now look, one of the reasons that Kelly said no to Sheriff Clark was because several people have died in his prisons, including a guy who died of thirst, which is unbelievable in America, including a child who died during childbirth because they wouldn't bring any medical professionals to help the mother. I mean, really barbaric stuff. But to give you a sense of what a lunatic Sheriff Clark is, he believes that Black Lives Matter and ISIS are working together to bring down the country. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And Kelly's like, oh, that's good. Now, of course, Donald Trump Jr. loves him, takes pictures with him, puts it on Twitter. All these cast of characters around Trump are like, Sheriff Clark. And Kelly's like, oh, yeah, look. And none of these guys are remotely liberal, okay? Including Kelly. Kelly's hard right-wing guy. I mean, when he was in the Department of Homeland Security, he was all on board for the Muslim ban. He wanted to, he's on board for building the wall. Don't get it mixed up, okay? This guy's no one's moderate. He's just not a lunatic. So when a guy walks in, he's like, I got a great idea. I want to work at the Department of Homeland Security. And he's like, okay, I'm all ears. What do you got? All right, what is it? I think ISIS and Black Lives Matter are working. Okay, good. Get the fuck out. Okay, get. Hurry up, getting out of here. And Chris Kobach, this guy's, as hardliner as it comes. And I was wondering why he was not in government, because he sounds exactly like Trump's kind of person. And it turns out Kelly had blocked it. So he just wants to be more reasonable in the right-wing path that they are going and more sane. So it's going to come to our question in a second, but one last quote for you guys now, back to the New York Times. But one associate who spoke to Mr. Kelly last month said the former commander had remarked that his current assignment was by far the hardest job he had ever had. And then that includes being a Marine grunt and everything else that he's done in his life. Of course, how do you control an uncontrollable man-child? So the question I pose to you guys is, should John Kelly resign in protest or stay and keep Trump in check? TYTnetwork.com/chief of staff. Now look, there's two reasons why you should say resign in protest. One is, well, he's brought some level of competence to the Trump White House, and we don't want them to get the Muslim ban passed or the wall built or giant tax cuts for the rich. So maybe John Kelly is not such a great thing in terms of policy. The second reason is, well, look, anybody with a conscience should resign in protest from Trump administration, especially after what he did after Charlottesville. On the other hand, the man-child could get angry and nuke North Korea or start a war that kills millions of people. Not an easy question. So TYTnetwork.com/chief of staff. Curious to hear what you think. He has kept more of the crazies out. He has brought order to the Trump White House for now. Likely it won't last, because as Scaramucci, another guy that Kelly basically fired, famously said, the fish rots from the head down. And that fish is Donald Trump, and it smells. Okay, now speaking of smells, let's go to Rush Limbaugh. Okay. Rush Limbaugh has a theory on hurricanes. Apparently, they might not really exist. Now, of course, this is enormously dangerous because Hurricane Irma is barreling down the Caribbean right now and very likely to hit Puerto Rico and also likely to hit Florida. So people must take precautions. But he's not going to go in that direction. He's going to go in the direction of lunatic conspiracy theories and endanger people's lives. So it's both amusing because it is so insane, but at the same time very dangerous. So let's listen in.
The reason that I am leery of forecasts this far out, folks, is because I see how the system works. Now, I don't mean this to be a personal attack on anybody, but the one thing that's undeniable throughout our culture is that everything has been politicized. And in that sense, much of our public information system, including from the government, from the drive-by media, has been corrupted. It has been corrupted by the individual biases and whatever present bigotry of the people who hold these positions. You can see it in the way the deep state deals with Trump. You can see it with the way the intelligence community and the Washington establishment deal with Trump. So in the case of a hurricane, what happens? Well, there are many levels here. when a hurricane pops up, and we can't forget Hurricane Harvey, because Hurricane Harvey and the TV pictures that accompanied that go a long way to helping further and create the panic. Now, in the official meteorological circles, you have an abundance of people who believe that man-made climate change is real. And they believe that Al Gore is correct when he has written, and he couldn't be more wrong, that climate change is creating more hurricanes and stronger hurricanes. And of course, when Harvey hit, it was the first hurricane that had hit in 12 years. There haven't been more hurricanes, and they're no more dangerous than any others in previous years. But it doesn't matter, because the bias is built in. So there is a desire to advance this climate change agenda. And hurricanes are one of the fastest and best ways to do it. You can accomplish a lot just by creating fear and panic. You don't even need the hurricane to hit anywhere. All you need is to create the fear and panic accompanied by talk that climate change is causing hurricanes to become more frequent and bigger and more dangerous. And you create the panic, and it's mission accomplished, agenda advanced.
Now, there's more, and there's a lot to say here, but let's just note for the record that Hurricane Harvey did actually hit, and it was real, and over 60 people have died, tens of thousands have been displaced, billions of dollars have been lost. That's enormously real, and it was more severe. It did create more rain, it did create more floods, and the water around Houston has gone up a half a foot in the last couple of decades, just like the scientists predicted. We had Hurricane Harvey was a more severe storm, just like the scientists predicted. And so now let's go to the fact that everything he does is projection. He says, now I have to tell you that everything has been politicized. Yeah, by you. You've politicized everything, including hurricanes. You're doing it right now. And then he says, the media has been corrupted. Yeah, by you. So among his so-called advertisers are right-wing think tanks. Those are funded by both multinational corporations and right-wing billionaires. Now, they don't actually need the people who listen to Rush Limbaugh to do anything for a think tank that's already funded by the billionaires. So why do they spend millions of dollars on Rush Limbaugh? Because they're buying propaganda. They're not selling any goods. They're not even selling any of the crazy shakes that Pat Robertson or Alex Jones sells. No, they're just saying, okay, I want to corrupt you. Here's money. You say what I tell you to say. And Rush is like, great, I'd love to do that. And then he talks about how there's a need to create fear and panic. That is Republican 101. Oh my God, the immigrants are crossing the border. They're crossing, oh, they have all the power. That guy who crossed the border with nothing at all, he has all the power, he's the problem. Oh, Sharia law is coming, oh my God, Oklahoma's gonna get taken over by Sharia law. Creating fear and panic. That's exactly what Rush Limbaugh does. So let's let him finish here as he talks about, as he said earlier, the biases. And why do you talk like that? You're such a weirdo. All right, here you go.
So what happens? Well, the TV stations begin reporting this, and the panic begins to increase. And then people end up going to various stores to stock up on water and whatever they might need for home repairs and batteries and all this that they're advised to get. And a vicious circle is created. You have these various retail outlets who spend a lot of advertising dollars with the local media. The local media, in turn, reports in such a way as to create the panic way far out, which sends people into these stores to fill up with water and to fill up with batteries, and it becomes a never-ending repeated cycle. And the two coexist. Both the media benefits with the panic with increased eyeballs, and the retailers benefit from the panic with increased sales, and the TV companies benefit because they're getting advertising dollars from the businesses that are seeing all this attention from customers.
So the retailers are working with the media companies. And by the way, look, if you say advertising affects what's happening on TV, I hear you. For example, political advertising affects it tremendously. So there's a rational argument to be made. But in this case, let's just follow his chain of thought here, logic, if you will. Okay, the retailers want to charge you more for water, for example, but except they don't. they freeze the prices. Otherwise, there's enormous blowback. But okay, whatever. They want to charge more, according to Rush, and they want everybody to grab the food, and that's true. The shelves are empty. So what they tell MSNBC and Fox News and CNN, pretend there's a hurricane. CNN then goes to all the meteorologists and says, okay, guys, you need to make up a hurricane that isn't actually coming, because this is part of what he mentioned earlier, a deep state plot against Trump. Except for the fact that a hurricane is coming. It's a category 5. Irma is the biggest hurricane ever recorded in history in the Atlantic Basin. So let's go to an actual meteorologist, Al Roker. He says, do not listen to Rush Limbaugh when he says Irma is not a dangerous storm and is hype. He is putting people's lives at risk. He says to have Rush Limbaugh suggest the warnings about Irma are fake or about profit, and to ignore them borders on criminal. Hashtag shame on Rush. If you don't get out of the way of a category 5, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You and your family's lives could be at risk. This buffoon, this conspiracy theorist, this guy who's paid to do propaganda is telling you, don't believe your eyes, don't believe any of the scientists. Just sit there in the eye of the storm and wait for it to hit you because it's all hype. Don't, whatever you do, if you live in Florida, certainly Puerto Rico, your life might literally depend on you not listening to Rush Limbaugh. So there's a time for politics and there's a time for science and reality. And science and reality are about to hit us pretty hard again. Look, there's a good way to show this, by the way, too. There is an ending to this movie. We'll know what happens when it actually comes. And if it hits Cuba and Haiti and Puerto Rico, but by the time it gets to Florida, it slows down a little bit, I know what Rush will say. He'll say, "Ha, you see that? It wasn't that bad." As if Puerto Rico and Cuba and Haiti don't exist, right? But they do in fact exist, and they are real, and so is the hurricane. And God help them all. I hope that it somehow slows down and miraculously does not hit any of that land. But that is not likely. What is far more likely is that the reality of climate change is hitting us, and it's hitting us hard, and it's hitting us right now. Okay, all right, so that's Rush. Now let me go to another lunatic who's even crazier. Really? Yeah, well, wait till you see. Ralph Peters is a so-called security analyst for Fox News. And he also writes for the New York Post because Rupert Murdoch is a warmonger and will put any lunatic on air and will print any article as long as it leads you to more war. Rupert Murdoch owns both the New York Post and Fox News. Now, Ralph Peters belongs in an insane asylum, but as long as he creates more war, Murdoch will take him out of that asylum and make him a respected analyst and pay him a lot of money to do this warmongering. So in case you think I'm exaggerating, well, I'll give you the exact article that Peters wrote and you can make your own decision. First of all, the headline in the New York Post for this article is, "The moral answer to North Korea threats, take them out." Okay, usual black and white idiocy of the right wing. You either destroy them all or they destroy us all. There is no middle ground, there is no diplomacy, there is no nuance. Why don't they just write the headline, "We're stupid"? Okay, but anyway, so this is the beginning of his brilliant piece. Listen to this, quote, "Better 1 million dead North Koreans than 1,000 dead Americans." Now, first of all, that's a false paradigm. There's no scenario or hypothetical where, okay, either we're gonna lose 1,000 Americans or 1 million North Koreans, we gotta make up our mind. In reality, if we start a war, we are likely to lose 1 million North Koreans and 1 million South Koreans and a lot of Japanese. Those are supposed to be our allies. He never mentions them. He never mentions that all those South Koreans and Japanese people are very likely to die with just conventional weapons, let alone atomic weapons, if we start a war with North Korea, because who cares? What are they, human? They're not Americans, I don't care about them. Well, you're gonna hear for yourself in exact quotes from him. But here, he's saying in a hypothetical, and by the way, thousands of Americans could also die. What if Kim Jong-un is not bluffing and they actually could reach Seattle, let alone Hawaii or Alaska or Guam or anywhere else, let alone South Korea, which we're supposed to care about. That's our allies there. Well, we had to start the war. There's nothing we could do. Now, you're saying so far he's saying, well, Cenk, did he say we're going to start the war? Great, hold on. The fundamental reason our government, this is a quote, the fundamental reason our government exists is to protect our people and our territory. Everything else is a grace note. Look at this monster. He just talked about killing 1 million North Koreans who are basically living in a police state right now. A lot of them are in concentration camps. They didn't ask for it. It's their dictator that's keeping them down. And he's like, well, 1 million dead Koreans. It's a grace note. They're unreal, man. He said, we should do something. This is again direct quotes. We should do something. Pyongyang's Sunday test of a hydrogen bomb of devastating power begs for decisive action. Must we wait until Americans die? This is the usual, we don't want the evidence to be in the form of a mushroom cloud. It's what Condoleezza Rice said before we attacked Iraq. How did that turn out for us? Oh, right, with thousands of dead Americans in a war we started and didn't need to start, let alone hundreds of thousands of dead Iraqi civilians. But are they really human? Do they really count? But the warmongers always say, don't wait, you gotta act first. Here's some more quotes to make it perfectly clear. Quote, a preemptive strike against Kim Jong-un's nuclear and ballistic missile programs would be a terrible thing, demanding a vast military effort if done properly and leaving broad destruction in its wake. But that terrible option increasingly appears to be the least bad option. The question is whether we'll delay action until it's too late to save American lives. In other words, go right now. Don't wait for diplomacy or economic sanctions to work or negotiate with the Chinese and the Russians to put pressure on the North Koreans. Bomb, 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 bomb. And it's the usual thing of like, oh God, it's such a shame we'll have to nuke them. I wish we didn't have to and kill millions of innocent people, but I guess it's the least bad option. It's the last. No, it's not the least bad option. I could name you 1,000 least bad options than using nuclear weapons on innocent civilians. And he's like Stalin, thinking 1 million people sounds like a statistic. It doesn't sound like real people. Understand, when we drop a nuclear bomb, babies get incinerated. Grandmothers get burned alive. When ISIS chops off heads or burns people alive, we are rightfully outraged. We would burn 1 million innocent civilians alive with this plan. And he's not saying that's even a bad case scenario. He's like, oh yeah, that's 1 million North Koreans, who cares? I am theoretically saving American lives with a war I'm starting, which will in reality cost American lives. He says, we do not want war. That much could not be more obvious. No, the whole point of this article is to say, let's go to war. It's obvious in the opposite direction. It's this typical, I don't want to name his name, but hey, I don't want to do this, but they made me do it. The North Koreans are so bad that I had to. Well, what could we do? Golly gee, we had to nuke them. Did I say nuke them? I said war was a bad option. He said, but we cannot sacrifice American lives to shield the consciences of intellectual elites who, from protected positions of immense privilege, insist that all human life is precious, not just our, quote, deplorable American lives. Break that down. First of all, who the hell said American lives are deplorable? Hey, idiot, I don't know if you know this, we all live here. Our families are here. Nobody thinks our lives are deplorable. Do you think we think our children's lives are deplorable? No, we would do almost anything to protect our kids' lives, our families' lives. Nobody said Americans were deplorable and that it's okay for them to die. You made that up because you're a lying, I could keep going on and on with adjectives, but a warmonger who wants the war no matter what and is willing to nuke people, kill 1 million innocent civilians without thinking twice about it. And then when he talks about like, these intellectuals who think all human life is precious. Okay, well, at least the lines are clear. Yes, I do believe all human lives are precious. If you don't, that's fine. I think you are an absolute monster. You should have no power in this country at all. Now, if we need to go to war, this country has gone to war many, many times. There is an appropriate time for war, such as World War II. By the way, when we were actually attacked, and we did not go into World War II until we were attacked. But for these guys, no, dude, can't wait for an attack. Just in case, let's kill 1 million innocent civilians because these intellectuals think that life is precious. Those North Koreans, are they really humans? South Koreans, our allies that we lied to, said we'd protect them. Who cares? They're Koreans, they're not even Americans. The Japanese, who cares? Who cares? It's not me. If it's not me, they don't count. He says, warfare has been humanity's ultimate means of resolving intractable issues since the first cave dwellers went at the gang from the cave down yonder with rocks. Wait, I thought you said you didn't want to go to war. Now you conclude by saying it is the ultimate means of resolving intractable issues. Why don't you just at least be honest about it? You want the war, you're looking forward to the war, and you've done everything to admit that you don't care about anybody else's life, and you think that that makes you somehow moral, that you're willing to murder babies and children and moms and dads and grandmothers and grandfathers, just burn them alive. Imagine 180 families being burned alive. Oh my God, that sounds so horrible, right? 1 million people, I got news for you, is a lot more than 180. It is family after family after family burned alive, incinerated. And Ralph Peters says, who cares? It's 1 million dead North Koreans. Who cares? The intellectuals will tell you that their lives matter. You're goddamn right we will. And we will try to protect all lives, and yes, of course, American lives, because we're Americans. We don't want to be endangered. It is your policies that endanger us. And as long as we can prevent it, we are going to try to prevent this totally unnecessarily brutal, genocidal war that you and your warmonger friends want to start, including your financier, Rupert Murdoch, who is just as much of a monster as you, maybe worse, because he hires monsters like you to say other people's lives don't matter. Let's just murder them preemptively. That's who you are. I'm not done yet. Now we go to our mainstream media. We're going to turn to politics, local politics. I don't know who I'm more mad at. Yeah, I'm more mad at Ralph Peters. Okay, but these guys piss me off too. Okay, last story here. So yesterday we did a story on Verret, that is a new site started by Hillary Clinton acolytes. Peter Dow has started it. And first thing he did was cry about how the media is not on Hillary's side. On which planet? Anyway, we're going to prove that where they lie in a second. But I want to show you the tweet that he put out there. And Hillary Clinton endorses Verret site. And he said, Leela Dow and I founded Verret because Hillary Clinton voters and inspiringly diverse coalition are unrepresented in the media. Hillary people are unrepresented in the media. So I give you Exhibit A, a panel yesterday on CNN to talk about Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders' primary. Now, one way to go about this conversation is to say, well, in a democratic process, of course you have a primary to determine who should be your nominee. And it's not incumbent upon anyone in a primary to withdraw. I mean, under that logic, shouldn't they have all withdrawn so that Martin O'Malley could win? What a bizarre thing to claim, right? You will notice that every single panelist on CNN believes that Bernie Sanders was wrong to have ever challenged Hillary Clinton, who of course should have been anointed. Anyway, you can watch for yourself here. First guy up is David Swerdlick. He's an assistant editor for Washington Post, the same Washington Post that wrote 16 negative articles about Bernie Sanders within 24 hours. Gee, I wonder if they're biased. Let's find out.
You know, it may not be a popular thing to say, but I think she's right that he was one of a number of reasons why she lost. There were a lot of sort of self-inflicted reasons, but one of the things that Sanders did in that campaign, for better or worse, was convince some Democrats that whatever had happened during the Obama years, a 38% drop in unemployment, getting rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Obamacare, et cetera, wasn't good enough, that they weren't getting anything out of their party, and that they should go a different way.
Couldn't you use that logic in every single primary that has ever been? If these guys hadn't challenged Mitt Romney, he would have beat Obama, but they did so much damage to Mitt Romney. If Bill Bradley hadn't challenged Al Gore, he would have beat George Bush. I mean, he lost Florida by this much. Actually, he didn't lose Florida. Okay, so, oh my God, let's just end democracy. Because we in the media anointed Hillary Clinton. How dare Bernie Sanders challenge her? Hey, why don't I flip your logic on its head? Bernie Sanders, in not some polls, in every single poll, and if you're a so-called journalist at the Washington Post or CNN, I defy you to find one poll 6 months out, go back as far as you can almost. Well, I think it's probably all the way out to a year out, where Bernie Sanders didn't do better than Hillary Clinton in a general election matchup against any of the Republicans. All of the polls said Bernie Sanders did better. So why don't you flip the logic and say, why didn't Hillary Clinton get out? She cost the Democrats by staying in, Bernie. We don't know, no one knows for a fact that Bernie would have won, but we do know for a fact that every single poll indicated he would have done better. We do know on the day of the election, she lost to a guy with a 37% approval rating, which was previously unimaginable. We do know that on that same day, Bernie Sanders had a 12-point lead against him. These knuckleheads think they're so sophisticated. Did you know that they would have run a campaign against Bernie Sanders? Yeah, of course we know that. So maybe the 12-point lead would have gone down to 8 points or 4 points. But it's a much bigger cushion than Hillary had, which is what we were pointing out based on science. So why didn't Hillary Clinton leave the race? No, Hillary, well, of course she was gonna be the candidate. We all love her on TV. Oh, you left that part out. You left the part out where the Washington Post attacked Bernie Sanders mercilessly, day in, day out during the primaries. Well, if you had done likewise to Hillary, maybe Bernie would have won the primaries. But no, it had to be Hillary, your beloved Hillary. You think he's the only one? No way. Here comes Jeffrey Toobin and Gloria Borger to do even worse.
Bernie Sanders set up the crooked Hillary image, through talking about the speeches to Goldman Sachs, right, talking about how she was in the pocket of Wall Street. That, I think, was used to devastating effect.
Let's just play this out. If she had hit back at him on all of this stuff, Bernie Sanders did not raise her emails. Remember, he was sick of her damn emails, right? So he didn't raise her emails, and he would have if she had hit him back, if she had hit him harder. If she had started hitting back at him, they would have just handed the Republicans more fodder.
You agree?
Absolutely, absolutely, and especially about the idea of personal corruption, the idea that there was something about her that was untrustworthy, which was something that Bernie Sanders made very clear.
Okay, wow, look at that, 3 for 3. Every single one of them had Hillary's boots for lunch. Bootlickers to the last one of them. Do you agree? Of course, Hillary. It would have made if Hillary had hit him. If Hillary had hit him, then we know that Bernie would have hit her. In other words, Bernie never hit her. He had the bankruptcy bill. He had 1,000 examples. I had him on the show and I asked him. He's like, I know the examples. I don't want to run that kind of negative campaign. He should have hit her. He should have hit her 1,000 times harder, so we wouldn't have lost to Trump. We could have had a real candidate who could win, who was a populist, who people actually cared about, instead of your goddamn elites on CNN and Washington Post and your beloved Hillary. So get this, she didn't hit Bernie. Oh my God, poor Hillary. How about when they called every Bernie supporter racist? How about when they implied that all of them were sexist? How about when they stuck the Bernie Bros thing on him, a piece of propaganda that is Republican 101, and every one of you on CNN and Washington Post went along with it. How about all of that? Oh, no. That Bernie, he was so mean to her. We had already crowned her queen. And then this guy came up and just ran a completely positive campaign saying, but maybe we shouldn't take billions of dollars in donations. And yes, the Clintons took $3 billion overall in campaign donations to the foundation and personal money they put in their pocket. And to say that maybe if you get $3 billion, that some people might want something in return. Don't say that. Then you're talking about corruption. And on TV, we don't talk about corruption because it's our boat. We don't want to rock it. Where do you think all the TV, where all the political money goes to? It goes into Jeffrey Toobin's pocket. And if you told him that, he'd go, oh, conspiracy theorist, crazy. No. The ads go on TV. What's on TV? CNN's on TV. Does CNN make tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars from the campaign? Of course they did. Well, who signs your paychecks, Jeffrey Toobin? CNN does, but what? But what? Well, they didn't tell me what to do. Of course, you schmuck, they didn't have to tell you what to do. They hired you because they already knew you were a bootlicker for the establishment. Yeah, how many Bernie Sanders supporters are on that panel? 0. How come they never made it on? What a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. They hired all of you guys because you love the status quo. You are the establishment. So you would go on there with your legitimate opinions about how awesome the establishment is and how Hillary Clinton should have been our queen. And that pesky Bernie Sanders, if it wasn't for you rascally kids, we could have gotten away with it. Well, you're not gonna get away with it. Next time, I guarantee you, fire and ice. I guarantee you, we're not gonna have kids' gloves anymore. And if it's Bernie or anyone else and they wanna run a soft campaign like he did against Hillary Clinton, we're not gonna have it. We are going to tell the American people the reality. The establishment is deeply corrupt, including Jeffrey Toobin, including Wolf Blitzer and Gloria Borger and the Washington Post, all of you. You all take the money and you all do exactly what the donors tell you to do, and the money gets funneled around and around Washington. Yes, you are the elite. Yes, America does not like you. Sad day for you, but get the fuck out of the way. Because we're not gonna lose to Donald Trump. We're not gonna lose to Republicans again. So if anyone should have left the race, I know it is an unimaginable thought to you. No, it must be our queen. It must be the queen of corruption. If anyone is going to leave the race, it's going to be the establishment. And it's not going to be progressives this time. It's not going to be a populist agenda. We're going to win with a populist agenda. And if you don't like it, go ahead, try to stop us. I wish you a lot of luck. You're going to need it, and it's not going to work. We're going to run over you, young Turks. I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think my dad's Oldsmobile, and I parked it in a place where there was 2 cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was an even worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all 3 cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh shit. And this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the 3rd car, okay? And I got stuck. I didn't know how to get out. Like I went, okay, this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know.
Wow, there's a B?
Yeah, I'm like, I hit 3 cars, I don't know. So you guys gotta come help me, okay? Okay, so 1, my bad, really sorry about that. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't wanna keep hitting your cars and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
Hey Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I want to do a YouTube live clip, but not live. Go.
They'd rather lose to Republicans than have a progressive win with them. That's how dumb the corporate Democrats are.
It's the Democrats who lull you to sleep, and at the end of the day, they're the ones who push the right-wing agenda.
Most of the people are either unemployed, underemployed, or fucked.
This is why you lost to Trump, you fucking moron. What the fuck is wrong with you? Whoever wrote that, I'm sure they were typing with one hand and going like this with you. The Democrats are dead. The way you feel right now, that's how a chump feels. Do not freak out.
back on AI Turks. John is here. We got to go, so I'm going to read some quick, excellent tweets for you guys.
Those sentences don't follow each other well.
The Forgotten Arm says, would General Kelly follow Tyrion's example and slap the fake tan off of Trump someday? Who would believe that if that tidbit leaked?
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yes. Michael Ritchie says, Omarosa didn't even win The Apprentice. I like reality TV stars that aren't losers. That's really funny. And Margot says, maybe Trump will listen to Rush and spend the weekend at Mar-a-Lago. One could only hope. Those are both excellent ideas. So Michael and
he'll be fine. He floats.
Michael and Margot, you both get T-shirts. ShopTYT.com. Oh, by the way, you will not be getting hats because the TYT hats have sold out. We are reordering them, maybe. We'll get them in a couple of weeks, but things do sell out at the store, so that's reality. That's not a conspiracy theory. ShopTYT.com. Go check that stuff out. And Michael and Margot, you guys get any shirt you want there. All right. Yeah. Go ahead, John.
First of all, I want to say that I'm very disappointed that we're probably not going to do the third story because it's awesome.
I hear you.
Unfortunately, we won't. Okay, Republicans are back to once again occasionally holding town hall meetings, but don't get too excited about it. It's not like democracy or anything because at Pat Toomey's recent PBS aired town hall, a man was actually arrested for asking a question that they deemed disruptive. Let's watch.
Our next question comes from Simon from Northampton.
Hello, Senator. Thank you for coming to answer our questions tonight. I know we've been here for a while. You probably haven't seen the news. Can you confirm whether or not your daughter Bridget has been kidnapped? The reason I ask is because that's the reality of families that suffer deportation.
That's a ridiculous question.
We're going to move on immediately to our next question now.
We're going to move on immediately to our next question. Look, I actually think, so the way that he framed it is unsettling, okay? It definitely is.
But it's intended to be.
I know it's intended to be, and we're going to explain that in a second.
We're going to read the whole question soon. But.
Yeah, he says, we've been here for a while. You probably haven't heard the news. There's no way you're not unsettled by that. So I get that you're going to be pissed about it. But let the guy finish because he was trying to make a really interesting point, which really goes to the core of why people hate politicians.
Yeah, and the problem really is that they sort of cut him off too early. Like all the creepiness is already past at that point, and you could have gotten into the actual question. Like, look, I've had experiences of doing live shows and people cutting in for a bunch of BS or whatever, and even in that case, where they weren't trying to make a serious point and have a dialogue, we still heard them out and responded. They should have done that. It's PBS, they're gonna be a little bit scared, of course. And in fact, Tim Fallon, the CEO of PBS 39, said that it was one of the scariest things I have ever been part of.
Oh, Jesus, okay.
Well, some of us lead blessed lives. But and a spokesman for Toomey said that asking questions that are based upon kidnapping a child is not only reprehensible, but it is inherently threatening. Inherently threatening?
Now look, it's a dangerous road to go down, and so I'm not 100% with him. But for God's sake, let's read you the rest of what he intended to ask so you guys have context.
So we didn't actually see it there, they cut him off. So let's bring up his Facebook post that the gentleman posted later on. And the important part is when you get to, do you know whether your daughter Bridget has been abducted? Using the name makes it a little bit creepier, let's keep it real. Whatever you're feeling right now, that's what it feels like to have a daughter deported. Thousands of fathers here in the Valley that live with that fear every day. Their daughters have names too. So here's my question. Do you unequivocally denounce any attempt by the administration to reverse DACA, which would hang the threat of deportation over hundreds of thousands of children the same age as Bridget? And so the thing is this is the way that it works. He's the politician, the distinguished gentleman, as you always point out. So if you talk about him potentially losing access to his child, this is inherently threatening. Get it? This is ridiculous. Cut his mic, arrest him, take him to jail. No charges were filed, but he did actually get arrested. But if you and hundreds of thousands of other families might have your children snatched away while you're at work or while you're commuting or something like that, oh, come on, we're not even gonna talk about that. That's a waste of our time to even discuss. Look, that's how the power imbalance works in this country.
I think talking about people's kids is way out of bounds. I think going to
his kid could be deported.
Hold on. And I think that going to people's homes are out of bounds. I know some left-wing guys did that to Bill O'Reilly. I don't like that. I know that he threatens to come to people's house. He sends people to people's house. But I don't like it on either side. And I think it's too personal, it's too hard. On the other hand, Well, this guy is clearly making, he didn't actually go to Toomey's house. He doesn't actually have Bridget, okay? Yeah. He was making a rhetorical point, and he was saying for a brief moment, I wanted him to feel, just for the smallest moment, for to feel what it might feel like if your kids were taken from you and taken away. And so the point that he's making is an intellectual one. So if you let him finish, it would have been an interesting, and if you actually bothered to answer. Now, wait a minute though. I know you're part of the elite and it is unconscionable for you, but shouldn't it also be unconscionable for the everyday American, for people who live in this country?
Yeah.
And so if it's such a horrific thought to you that I am banned immediately and arrested,
then pure why is hypothetical is threatening. The actual reality for millions of Americans is not nearly as important to him as a pure hypothetical that he had to think about for 2.5 seconds.
And right now, the right wing might argue, well, Trump deporting 800,000 people, including their kids, and in the case of Dreamers, they were all kids when they were brought in. They're not all necessarily kids now. Well, you could say that's a hypothetical. Well, the guy just got arrested for a hypothetical. The initial charges were disorderly conduct and disrupting a public meeting.
I think he's good now.
Now he's good now, but that was the original charges.
Yeah.
So, well, then shouldn't we arrest Trump? I mean, but
however hypothetical it is, it's a lot less hypothetical than it was last week. And in 6 months, it might be a lot less hypothetical.
But you know that dude asking the question in the middle of a town hall can't actually set laws, right? But Trump and Toomey and the others can set laws, and by getting rid of an executive order, has actually taken action, real action. So we're not saying threaten the establishment and their kids, or it's of course not. That is reprehensible.
Leave Bridget alone.
But what we're asking you to do is to treat the rest of us also as human beings.
Yes.
And that when our kids are endangered, allow us to also feel threatened and to worry about our kids. And please take that seriously, because that is an actual threat, a real threat that could happen, now is likely to happen.
Yeah.
So the disparity in how we're treated is what is unbearable to the rest of Americans. But the folks on TV and the senators, they're blinded to it. They literally, I don't think Toomey has even considered that idea.
And look, he's a Republican politician. We know that most Republican politicians seem to have been born without whatever genes it is that causes empathy, but like you have to try and fight to make him realize for just a second that for these people whose lives you don't know about or care about or experience, Pat Toomey, they love their kids at least as much as you love your child. They're not just hashtag Democrat larva or whatever conservatives want to call them. They care about them just as much, and they care about their future, and they're scared of them being ripped away from them in the same way that you would be for Bridget. That is what Pat Toomey forcibly rejected having to think about and actually experience even for a second.
Yeah, and in the post game, I'm going to give you guys an example of a question just like that, very similar to that, not just like it, a little less harsh, but one that gave a hypothetical that I asked a law professor when I was a conservative, and the reaction she had, and it's amazing. You know, it is true that people want to shut down speech that they are uncomfortable with, no matter which direction it comes from. But the common theme is the same rules do not apply to us.
Yeah.
The elite and the establishment are untouchable, and your kids are optional. And if you feel, that we might rip them away from you, whatever. That's not our problem. That's your problem, and that is what's driving Americans crazy about the establishment.
Yeah, my last point is I look forward to the videos from Tommy Lauren and Tucker Carlson about this guy's free speech rights, being violated.
Yeah.
They're gonna go wild tonight about it.
Yeah, look, I'm sure every right winger and Shapiro and all those guys
are so angry right now.
Right, they're protesting in Pennsylvania as we speak. Anyway, find out my story from when I was a conservative. tytnetwork.com/join. If you become a member, you support the show, and you get the post games where we give you more personal stories as well. All right, we got to take a quick break here. When we come back, we do have a couple of stories for you. We'll be right back. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay.
What?
Okay.
Like physically?
Yeah. Okay. What? You don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped. Here's my prediction: that someone at TYT will say, "Cenk, you've got to stop working out."
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to like do your daily duties for the main show.
Duties. I don't even have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible, but you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you like 2 different types of grilled cheeses with like tater tots for lunch. Like you can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost never.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, did they change the icon for Vine? I can't find it.
This is the Gaslamp Killer. Piece to Absent presents 2016 shit. I like drums. I like big drums. Heavy, funky, deep drums. I'm not classically trained. I just started out as a record collector. I have synthesizers. I have all these modular synths and fun DJ tools that I use to make psychedelic sounds. It's not just the music. People want to leave their bodies in order to connect with the spirit world. And when you're making music, it's a similar kind of thing. You want to escape your day-to-day to leaving this shit behind and finding more of a deeper place to create from. That is the essence of Gaslamp Killer music.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and John. The liberal mom writes in, Pat Toomey is my senator. He's as useless as a filament for a tube TV. That is a curious analogy. All right.
I see. If you just asked me, do tube TVs need filaments? I'd be like, yes. Yeah, they need like 5 filaments.
Yeah, I got a filament the other day on my tooth. All right, let's keep going.
Okay. As Hurricane Irma continues its path towards Florida, along the way, by the way, devastating multiple islands. We've been seeing news throughout the day about that. Many along the way are evacuating. Some are getting away if they can. Obviously, in the islands, it's difficult. Some fleeing to different sorts of shelters. But there are certain areas where if you do intend to go to a shelter, you better bring your paperwork, because the Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd is going to be screening everyone that tries to get into one of these shelters in his county to make sure that you've never broken any laws. He tweeted this: if you go to a shelter for #Irma and you have a warrant, we'll gladly escort you to the safe and secure shelter called the Polk County Jail. This is a man with his priorities in order. He says if you have a warrant, turn yourself into the jail. It's a secure shelter. I guess that's trying to save himself the paperwork, I suppose. And we're gonna go to some other quotes of this guy because he's kind of an a-hole historically. But look at that. I mean, some people are gonna look at that and think, oh well, yeah. I mean, you don't want people who are breaking the law in a shelter. But what you probably also don't want is most of the police that are supposed to be helping people instead spending all their time going back through the personal histories of everyone who tries to get a blanket and a roof over their head.
Sounds like big government bureaucracy to me. Yeah. So there's a couple of issues here. One is, I don't want, just like John said, forget the paperwork. I don't want the cops driving back and forth between the jail. Like, let's go. There's a hurricane category 5 coming.
They probably can't do that anyway once the hurricane hits.
Yeah, there's a category 5 coming. It's the biggest hurricane that has ever been recorded in the Atlantic Basin. Let's prioritize here, okay? Yeah. Now, look, I know one of the things he said later is that we don't want innocent children in a shelter with sex offenders. So, okay, that's fair, and nobody wants that. But
well, remember how broad our sex offender laws are in the US. Like if you're an 18-year-old that streaks like a football field or something like that, you're a pedophile for the rest of your life.
No, I know, but I don't want to get into distinctions of child sex offenders. It's not the time, okay? Because if you start talking about that, on the other hand, people have minor traffic violations. They couldn't pay it, and then now there's a warrant for them, or they didn't have insurance when they were driving. Look, you can do parade of the horribles on both ends. This is not the time. Get people into shelters, because while you're doing paperwork outside and discouraging people from coming to shelters just in case they had a traffic ticket or a fine or whatever it was, people are gonna die. So let's rescue everybody first, and then if you're the sheriff, isn't it your job to, in normal times, to go serve those warrants?
You'd think.
Like, isn't like, so what are you trying to shirk your duty here? Like, oh man, it's such a pain in the ass to go try to find those people. And really, if there's a sexual offender out in the loose so that has attacked children and you haven't caught him, well, go catch him before the hurricane. Catch him the other 364 days.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, there's the people who did something, like, I don't know, God knows what you could have a warrant out for that isn't as bad as he's making it sound, who theoretically won't go to a shelter and might now die in the hurricane. But then there's also the chilling effect of that they're purposefully, like they do in elections, when they say all of your paperwork is gonna be checked and they're gonna go back over your history. It's a lot of people are now gonna be scared that some out of control police are gonna be rooting around in their personal history, intimidating people and all of that stuff, and they won't necessarily feel safe going to the shelter now. Even if they don't have a warrant out on them, some people are gonna be scared away from this, and they're gonna be outside when the hurricane hits and lives will be lost. I don't even think that's a side effect of what he's doing. I think that's the goal of what he's doing. He's not trying to catch a couple of people with warrants. He's trying to keep the shelters stocked with just the sort of people that he's comfortable with.
Part two, this is a good illustration of how a lot of politicians, he's not a politician, but he's trying to look a certain way, like a politician would. He wants to look like a tough guy. Bottom line, he has no, maybe he doesn't, I'm speculating completely here. What's the level of plan that he has to check every person that comes in? He wants to put out an APB and say, hey, everybody, I'm the tough guy, and whoever wants to come in here and deal with this tough guy is gonna have to deal with this tough guy, because I'm a tough guy. Hey, aren't I a good sheriff? It's all self-promotion. So whatever it is once you wanna make yourself look a certain way so that you don't have to actually do any other work. I'm getting everybody that comes in here. Go ahead, be a
Yeah, well, look, I thought my take on it was slightly different than you guys because it was going to be the one time the police got good press for helping people, and he's like, I got a great plan to ruin it.
Hold my beer.
Yeah.
I can take care of this. Yeah, so we don't have time to go back through all of his quotes, but this guy is insane. He's regularly encouraging the people in his district to go out and murder people.
All right,
anyway.
Last story.
Okay. Back in May, Donald Trump had a very high-profile trip to Saudi Arabia. You might remember it. It led to a couple of odd moments, like if we could bring up this picture, you might remember the orb incident. I don't know what that was about. Nobody gets that to this day.
To this day, I don't understand.
And nobody understands why they're all looking in different directions or what it is that Trump's looking at or why his face is contorted in that particular froggy way that it is. But look, he had that meeting and there was
like did the Saudi prince or whatever he is, did he see a ghost? Did he see a jinn? Like whoa, like he seemed freaked out, and Trump looked like he was like the main villain in some sort of B movie.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, like it's like he sees Sauron's eye and he's kind of happy about it.
Right, whereas at least the Saudi dude has like the decency to be freaked out by Sauron's eye.
And Melania's like, good, one ball I don't have to touch.
Oh.
Anyway, so that wasn't all that went on that trip. Actually, it turns out that the Saudi government showered Donald Trump and his family with over 80 gifts. Gifts that are weirdly luxurious even by Donald Trump standards. And so we want to go back through a few of these and then get into why there's potentially some legal troubles with this. But first of all, these are just weirdly specific. An orange and gold wool robe lined with cheetah fur, a blue and silver wool robe lined with white tiger fur, and just in case you don't like that but you still want to wear tiger, you get the purple tiger fur one too. So 3 tiger and cheetah fur robes. There are like dozens of robes in this, by the way. We're not gonna list them all. Then it gets sort of weirdly martial. There's a dagger made of pure silver with mother of pearl sheath and various designs. 1 large sword, a dagger, a leather ammo holder and holster, and then just in case, backup daggers and swords and holsters. The hammer of Thor, an Iron Man Mark II suit. No, I'm kidding, those weren't there. But lots of weapons, multiple daggers, which they messed up. Okay, if you want to win over Donald Trump, you give him a opulent tiger fur robe. If you got daggers and swords, that's how you win over me. Because I want those, that sounds awesome.
There's literally one on your shirt.
Oh my God. We've got more, but what's your initial impression?
Well, I actually think they do have Trump figured out. Once you tell them my favorite part in a second,
okay,
it's a perfect combination of things that would appeal to Trump. But I want you guys to understand the context. Normally, the US president, his first foreign visit will be to either Canada or Mexico or the UK, which we always say we have a special relationship with. Now, I understand why Trump is not going to go to Mexico first. That might not be the first great trip for him. But he ignored all this. United Kingdom, Canada, who cares, right? And he went straight to Saudi Arabia, which we always thought was slightly weird. And so now that we know that he's been showered with gifts and
clothes,
he was trying to have business dealings with them as well. And so you begin to understand the context of why on God's green earth he went to Saudi Arabia first. And of course, in return for all this, they got $110 billion weapons deal.
Yeah.
And so
that was the return gift, it turns out. If someone gives you shirts and scarves, you give them $500 million of precision guided munitions.
Yeah, and by the way, we're like, oh, the Saudis gave him daggers and swords. Remember, the Saudis actually do live by Sharia law, the one that Republicans like Trump claim to be freaked out by. And so there's some benign parts of Sharia law as to like how you get divorced. I don't agree with any of that either, but at least nobody's getting killed. And then there are bad parts of Sharia law, especially how the Saudis interpret it, not how everybody interprets it. But they have this same interpretation that ISIS does. That is why they also chop off people's hands and their heads. And they do it with swords like the one they gave Trump. I mean, could you imagine if Trump went and got an honorary sword from ISIS? But these guys have the same religious ideology, but it's not just an ideology. It's a fundamentalist interpretation of Islam that they act out, that they execute people with, chop their heads off with. And everybody's like, oh, bravo, a sword and a dagger from the Saudis. Okay, now finally the best
one. Scary. Oh, we're getting it. First of all, let's jump through these next two. It's 4 traditional shirts in black, orange, and green with floral embroidery. Oh, Trump is going to be such a fancy lad in his floral embroidery. Anyway, I'm just joking. More leather ammo holders and holsters. How many holsters does one man need?
Jesus.
By the way, I don't think he could properly fill out one holster, if you know what I mean. Okay, next, 4 boxes of gold-plated coin from Bank of Kuwait. Did they literally just give him a bunch of gold? Are you allowed to do that?
That's just giving him money.
That's coins. That's literally, a bank gave him coins.
That's
I don't
what
think
we
you
used
can do
to
that.
call a bribe.
Yes. My favorite might be 3 painted boxes filled with various small trinkets and children's books, which Trump was reported as squealing with delight and then saying, "Oh, Barron will like these." By the way, the books were above his reading level, so they messed up again. I was surprised to see a bronze dugong model, which if you're not sure what that is, this is a dugong. Although for Trump, it'll probably look more like this. It's a marine mammal related to a manatee.
Which of course is found in the Saudi desert. What?
I don't know, but he's got it. Let's see, let's run through a few others. Another sword, a copy of the Kuwaiti Constitution. That
It
seems
has
weird.
one?
That seems weird. A sleeveless white silk cotton garment, which as soon as she saw it, Melania said, "Please never ever wear that." A portrait of himself and 3 chiffon dresses. I think those are separate. I don't think he's in the chiffon dresses in the portrait. But you've got multiple colors there. And so what was your favorite, if not any of these?
No, my favorite was the giant portraits of Donald Trump that they gave him. And not only that, they put artwork featuring the picture of the president all over the buildings when he came in.
Yep.
So now break it down. They think, okay, we got to appeal to Trump so he'll give us whatever we want. What does Trump like? He's obsessed with himself, he has an ego. Put Trump pictures everywhere. And then literally hand him pictures of himself. If I went to a country and they're like, "Congratulations, here's a picture of you," I'd be like, "What?" Right? But Trump is like, "Yes, remember when he misused his own charity funds to buy pictures of himself."
And dugong models, yeah.
Yes.
That's what he bought.
And belligerence, that is the swords and the daggers. He likes belligerence. Tacky, he
loves tacky.
The pale chiffon dresses and the
wool purple tiger rugs.
The tiger robes. Oh my God, they're probably like, who the hell would wear this?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect, Trump's coming to town, right?
So look, it's obviously really funny, but there is a more serious angle. It's really fast. Legally, American officials may keep gifts from foreign officials that are valued at less than $390, which doesn't buy you a lot of tiger fur last time I checked. So did they donate them? Did they give them away? Well, the White House didn't respond to an email seeking comment from the New York Times. So there is every reason to believe that they broke the law and kept thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars of gifts from the Saudi government. That they are even right now in violation of the law and refuse to provide any evidence that they're in accordance with the law.
To be fair, they can keep the tiger robes. But they better turn in the Kuwaiti gold. That is ridiculous. This is a ceremonial present we call dollars. Here you go.
Many dollars. And by the way, if you wonder, well, is this just a Trump thing? No. The Saudis do give gifts to other presidents. Back in 2015, State Department records show that they gave almost 2 dozen gifts to officials, including Barack Obama and Michelle. So they got less than 2 dozen, which is far less than the 80 that Trump himself got. One was lavish. It was a sculpture of 2 horses covered in diamonds, tsavorite, I'm not even familiar with that, yellow sapphires, rubies, and obsidian, worth $500,000, but we know that because that's what it was appraised at when the Obamas gave it away to the National Archives, as they're supposed to in keeping with the law.
Okay, can't wait to see.
But the parties are all the same.
I can't wait to see the tiger robes in the National Archives. All right, we got to go. Amazing stories.
You're going to see him lounging on a bed in a tiger robe is what you're going to see.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing stories in the second hour, including the arrest of an NFL player, which is shocking. And unfortunately, happens far too often. We'll give you the context, and I'm pretty worked up about that on a day where I'm pretty worked up. Come right back.
I'm gonna tell you a story, and then I want you to tell me what you think about the way I reacted to the situation and if you thought it was acceptable.
Guilty. Oh wait, I gotta wait for the story.
I know Anna Kasparian has some stuff to say, and the world needs to hear it.
But then he became woke bae. I hate it.
I love it. I love it.
Jesus and I used to do this trick where we would elongate the videos so that we would look skinnier.
That is the most positive drug dealing story I've ever heard of.
Bears don't give a fuck.
I trust you guys, audience. Don't let me down.
You don't believe in ghosts? Talking about pussy. Oh, don't.
The food in Turkey is phenomenal.
Hey, we got spammy TYT. What is this? What's a spam?
Oh, death.
Did you want to poop outside? No, I poop here. It's fine because I bury it.
And you know what happens in that water? Turns frogs gay.
And they can't stand the establishment. And then I slipped and fell on my ass.
Guess I gotta get comfortable here.
That is tomorrow's joke. Cenk, when your time is up, what wouldn't you do for just one more day?
I'm gonna try to have sex with you. If you don't want it right now, just roll up a newspaper and hit me.
Hottest club I've ever been to is my bedroom. People often say that you are the Jasmine of TYT.
Yep. Please, I am not with you, baby. You gotta let me go.
Oh God, this hurts so bad.
You're alive, you're alive. The last day is not any more valuable than today is.
Hey, what's up?
Aaron, what do you like better? The rabies or the rabies? Go.
We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're gonna help us run the country.
Like this.
It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us.
Whoa, democracy!
United!
We are!
We are!
Too strong!
There's thousands of volunteers, and you could be among them.
With Wolfpack, the mission is so clear.
Money is killing our democracy.
96% of Americans want it.
When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock.
We're coming for them!
Wolf-pack.com.
All right, back on the Young Turks, we were talking about a very important story during the break about poop throwing. It is not about Republicans, believe it or not, but it is later in the program. Yeah. Okay, Screaming for Change says, how corrupt our system that Donald Trump could get all these gifts and it's not against the law. It's all a facade, 2 sets of justice. To be fair, it is against the law. Like he's supposed to get them and then donate them. He can't just keep them. But I'd love to be a fly on the wall when someone explains that to Trump. He's gonna be so mad.
Wait, what are we talking about? What is he
Well, the Saudis gave him all sorts of like extravagant gifts, and so did the Kuwaitis. And you know that I just did the story in the beginning about how he gets so ornery if you tell him anything he doesn't want to hear. And they're like, Donald, you got to give the tiger robes back. And he's going to be like, how dare you? Somebody fire John Kelly. What do you mean I can't just keep the gold that the Kuwaitis gave me? They just gave him gold. Anyway, members of the day are Manuel Buitrago. There's no way I said that right. And Russell Miller. Okay, so Manuel and Russell, you guys rock the world. Thank you for supporting the show. And in today's post game, I will tell you the story of when I was a conservative. I did a hypothetical that a liberal law professor did not like, and she banished me, she silenced me, and was it right or wrong? Have I learned from it now that I'm a lib, or am I sticking to my guns? It's a fascinating story. tytnetwork.com/join to hear it. Forward.
All right. The defensive end for the Seattle Seahawks, Michael Bennett, is making headlines after he shared a detailed encounter that he had with police officers in Las Vegas. Now, this was an encounter that he had with the cops after the Mayweather-McGregor fight that just recently happened. And he starts off explaining the encounter by describing the fact that there were sounds which appeared to be or sounded to be gunshot wounds. Gunshots, not wounds, because you can't hear wounds, you see wounds. I'm an idiot. Anyway, let me continue. All right, so he starts off by saying that he was with a group of people. He hears what he thought and what people thought were gunshots, and so people start to run. At that point, cops approach him and they single him out. Now, I'm gonna give you his exact wording. This is a statement that he released on Twitter to share his story. He said, after the fight, while heading back to my hotel, several hundred people heard what sounded like gunshots. Like many of the people in the area, I ran away from the sound looking for safety. Las Vegas police officers singled me out and pointed their guns at me for doing nothing more than simply being a black man in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, he details what they did to him physically. As I laid on the ground, remember at this point they've apprehended him, complying with his commands to not move, he placed his gun near my head and warned me that if I moved, he would blow my head off. Terrified and confused by what was taking place, a second officer came over and me doing nothing more than simply, and forcefully jammed his knee into my back, making it difficult for me to breathe. They then clinched the handcuffs on my wrist so tight that my fingers went numb. Now that was his explanation of the encounter. TMZ managed to obtain some surveillance of what occurred and they released it on their website. We have a portion of that surveillance for you and it seems to corroborate Bennett's version of the encounter. I want to show that to you guys right now.
So I got you. Question. I was here with my friends. They told us to get out. Everybody ran. Did you ask me a question, sir? Okay, man. Just come together.
So later on, they placed him in a patrol car and then later let him go when they realized who he was. Again, he is the defensive end for the Seattle Seahawks. He is not any type of criminal. He did absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, after an investigation, they found out that those sounds weren't even from a gun. And he is planning on filing a civil lawsuit against the police department.
Okay, so
a civil rights lawsuit.
Okay, so he said that they said they were gonna blow his effing head off. Now the TMZ video starts later, as you can tell. Guy starts recording. You go look down. At that point, the cops got the knee on his back, just like Bennett described. And so look, if there was an APB out for a guy who looked just like Bennett, they better have it contemporaneously from the time, and they better put it out. But think about what happened and how impossible that is. They thought they heard gunshots, and police were there because of the fight and responded immediately. How could there be already a report about an incident that happened seconds ago describing who did it? That's pretty much impossible. If they have it, boy, they should share it with the public immediately. So in reality, it appears that what happened is, to be fair, everybody thought there was a gunshot. Bennett thought there was a gunshot, that's why he was running away like almost everyone else was, right? Cops hear what they think is a gunshot, they look into a crowd and they're like, large black man, let's arrest him. Why? No, but it's a literal question. Why him out of all the people in the crowd? Why pick that guy as the one who would have a gun and who did the shooting when everyone is running? Other than race and the fact that maybe he's large, but why is a large guy more likely to have a gun than a small guy? It makes no sense. And I say that genuinely because I didn't grow up racist, so I'm constantly confused by it. Why the hell would you assume a black guy has a gun? And I guess, but the cops and a lot of people in the country are trained to believe black people are dangerous, and if they're large, they're more dangerous. Danger, danger, danger. So if you got a crowd of people, hundreds of people, it was a McGregor fight, thousands of people. Just find the largest black guy and arrest him.
Yeah,
I mean, what kind of police work is that? That's insane.
Right, it's lazy police work, and also this perfectly illustrates why the stereotypes that are perpetrated over and over and over again in the media, not just now, but through this country's history, have such a pervasive impact on society as a whole, on the way we do policing in the country, right? They have bought into those stereotypes. They have bought into, or I should say, they have those biases. The cops do, right? And so yeah, that is their instinct. Their instinct is to go after the first big black person that they see. That's the reason why, even though there was a crowd of people running because they thought they heard gunshots, they immediately went to the one black person there. And also, let me just be clear about something. Look, it's one thing if you made a mistake as a cop, that's the first person you go for. But they don't even want to hear him out. He's trying to talk, and they're threatening him.
They pulled a gun and put it to his head. But think about that, the chance that you have the right guy is so small. But you're willing to threaten to execute the man on the spot who is enormously likely to be innocent. Out of a crowd of thousands of people, you have no evidence of anything. You just heard the sound. You run in, you grab the largest guy. Maybe it's based on size. I mean, I don't know. Are the right wingers really going to tell us, no, it's just a wild, wild coincidence? It could have been a small white guy and they just happened to grab.
No, they are going to say that.
They are.
They are going to say that. They are going to make excuses for it.
Do you really believe that? How could you possibly believe that?
Because they don't care. They don't care, okay? They don't care. They're much more interested in, and not all conservatives, but certainly the ones that we hear about and hear from in the media, they are much more interested in painting Black Lives Matter as a terrorist organization, as opposed to looking at this deep injustice that we have in the country. And of course, it disproportionately impacts minorities, disproportionately impacts black people, but it impacts every single one of us, because when you embolden cops to this point where they feel safe enough to pull a gun and point it to someone's head without even knowing whether or not this person is guilty of committing any crime, well then anyone can be a victim of that kind of stuff. He's lucky he didn't get shot, right?
No, he's enormously lucky. Because at that point when the cop has pulled his gun, anything you do slightly wrong, and he's dead, man. And then they'll get into his life and they'll say, did he ever smoke pot? Did he have it coming? You pulled him out of a goddamn crowd. You blindly pulled him out of a crowd, and then they would blame him afterwards. And then you know what people would say, and thank God there's at least some video of it. Well, did he comply with the officer? If he didn't comply with a deeply racist officer who pulled him out of a crowd for no goddamn reason, he should have been executed. That's what they would say in hindsight, not because that's theory, it's because that's what they have said in the past over and over and over again. So he sits for the national anthem. The whole league should sit for the national anthem. Why do you think they sit? Not because of the invented reasons of the right wing that they hate the troops. What the hell are you talking about? They didn't say anything about the troops. Kaepernick sat because he said, look, there's a deep problem in the country we all have to address together, which is that black individuals are disproportionately singled out by cops. Michael Bennett was one of the first people to join him in that protest. Kaepernick is still banned from the league. De facto banned. You're telling me he's not one of the top 96 quarterbacks? If you don't know football at all, if you think that, that's a moronic, ridiculous thing to say. He led a team to the Super Bowl. But he's banned from the league because why? He pointed out a thing that is both statistically undeniably true and something that African Americans live with every single day. And one more piece of credit to Michael Bennett. He at least knows his privilege. So he doesn't have white privilege, obviously, and as we just saw, but he has the privilege of being rich and famous. So after keeping him in a cop car for a while and after having nearly executed him, they're like, oh, he's famous. They're like, sorry, you get to go. Now imagine if he wasn't famous. Imagine he wasn't a football player or rich. And Michael Bennett, to his great credit, has imagined that. And he's like, God knows what would have happened to me and how long they would have kept him in prison, etc. They didn't have any evidence in the first place. And he says, look, at least I'm lucky. They could look me up and see, oh, damn, oh no, we're gonna get in trouble because he's famous. We gotta let him go.
So everyone who's mad about the protest, because that was one of the coincidences of this whole thing. And Michael Bennett is the next biggest name that has started to do the national anthem protest before games. And to join Kaepernick, as you said. So imagine your disdain, your anger, every time this guy sits down or says something that you don't like, that now he doesn't support the troops, he hates your flag, oh, he's so reverse racist. So when you think about that and you hate his lack of respect for the things you've created, this straw man you've built, how much do you respect his life? Do you respect the fact that he was wondering if he's gonna see his daughters ever again, if he's ever gonna see his wife again? He detailed all this in his little letter. So if you don't care about that, why should he care about your perceptions about his disdain for the country? Why do you think he should care about what you feel when you don't even care about his life? Right. His life, whether or not he's gonna see his children again. So why the respect that you expect him to have for you should go both ways. If you don't think it should, then you're the problem. You're the beginning of the problem. And by the way, when you're, and I know we've said this many times, but when you watch your national anthem at home, or you go to the bar and watch your damn team, if you don't stand up and put your hand over your heart and take your motherfucking hat off, you are a piece of shit. You're a hypocrite and you have nothing else to say about this. If you're sitting down when that national anthem is playing, oh man, you should be sent away. You hate our troops, you hate our flag.
I've been to 1,000 stadiums. Some people do stand up. Most people do not stand up. They don't put their hand on their heart. They don't do any of that goofy stuff.
I was in a stadium yesterday.
They don't do it. They don't do it.
Most people are at the concession stands.
Yeah.
They're going to the bathroom.
How dare you be getting a hot dog while our beloved national anthem is playing? You don't mean it for a second. You just want a reason to hate these guys. And look, Colin Kaepernick is an American hero. Later, I guarantee it, write it down in stone, he will be treated as a hero. Just like they did with the 1968 Olympics, just like with Muhammad Ali objecting to the war. Later, decades later, they'll say, wow, that was so brave. He risked his whole career, lost millions upon millions of dollars to make a statement about other African Americans who were being treated poorly. But now we're in the middle of the gross, ridiculous discrimination against an American hero today. We're in the middle of it, and we're in the middle of this hateful country. Not everybody, I think the majority of people actually would support Kaepernick, and nobody ever asked. They always say like, oh, there's a couple of Trump supporters who don't like Kaepernick, we should ban him from the league. How about all the people who like Kaepernick? How about all the people who agree with him? Oh, they don't count, they're black or they're white or they're liberals, I don't care. Well, I only listen to conservatives because the owners happen to be billionaires. What a wonderful coincidence. Almost all of them are Republicans. What a wonderful coincidence. Robert Kraft showed up at the inauguration with Donald Trump holding hands. Oh, what a wonderful coincidence. And then somehow liberals are running the country? No. The billionaires are the ones that set the rules, literally in the NFL. So Michael Bennett's an American hero, Kaepernick's an American hero. The entire league should sit for the national anthem until something is done. And they're not asking for the moon in the sky. JR is right, the part that was the most moving is, he said, I kept thinking about what if he pulls the trigger and I never get to see my daughters again. When that happens to any American and you don't stand up for them, you're the one who's unpatriotic. You're the one who doesn't believe in the American idea that we were all created equal.
All right, we got to toss to break, but during the break, I would really like for us to toss to the video that we didn't get to. This is actually Michael Bennett addressing what happened during a press conference, and I think it's powerful, and you can see the emotion. So stick around, we're gonna take a quick break, we'll be right back.
Do I think every police officer is bad? No, I don't believe that. Do I believe there's some people out there that judge people on the color of their skin? I do believe that, and I'm just focused on trying to push forward and keep continuously championing the quest for justice for people, keep pushing equality for oppressed people, and that's just what I'm about, and what I keep doing.
You said no matter how many sacks I get, no matter how many Pro Bowls I get to, I am a black man in America, and there are going to be people who judge me based solely on that. I wonder if that lesson has just, I don't know if you reflected on that since the incident.
I think I reflect on that constantly and daily. I think I try to tell my daughters every single day that they matter, and that, you know,
Thank you.
Today is truly a historic day with the Supreme Court decision that makes same-sex marriage legal nationwide.
So this is one of those days in American history, it doesn't come along that often, where we have expanded the circle of liberty.
Look, all we try to do on this show, okay, is to give you perspectives, right? So you can get a better understanding.
We need to change our mentality and understand why these people are trying to leave their own countries and everything that they've known, everything that they've built.
Yeah.
It's not to come here and harm you.
Anytime you force someone, like they did in Arizona, to carry their paperwork, it's to remind them every day that they do not belong in your society.
Now that is the sound of fascism beginning here in America.
Doesn't that scare you? Don't you see history repeating itself? That xenophobia and faux populism to get people worked up to attack outsiders.
That is violent rhetoric, and your violent rhetoric translates to violent actions. If you don't get that, well, you're either in denial or you know it's true and you just don't want to admit it.
What's the message we're sending to the rest of the world? I mean, give us your poor, you're tired, and we will greatly mistreat them under horrible conditions where some of them will die. That's not what the Statue of Liberty says.
If you asked me to come up with something insulting to Latinos, I couldn't have done anything like this. I wouldn't have thought to insult their grandkids.
2/3 of the people shot when they're unarmed were blacks and Latinos. That means they were wrong. They're like, who cares? Shoot them, shoot them, shoot them, shoot them.
Look, my dad was born in Syria. My dad could have stayed in Syria and he could have been a victim of all this, right? And the thought of the United States saying no to Syrian victims, I don't know, it makes me incredibly emotional and incredibly angry because I think it goes against what this country's about.
The fighters, the warriors, the ones who go the extra mile, in this case literally, to provide for their family and to look for that American dream. And they shouldn't be forced to live in an American nightmare. back on the Young Turks. Cenk and Anna with you guys. One tweet for you guys. CJ writes in, they released him after they found out who he was, referring to Michael Bennett. So glad he wasn't just a normal black guy or he'd need a lawyer. Yeah, I mean, the degree to which his life would have been ruined even if they didn't shoot him, if he was just a normal person, not an NFL player. I mean, God knows. I mean, how long do they have him in prison for? I guess maybe he can't go to his job the next day, and then he's fired. I mean, like all these cascading consequences that happen to people, but we don't see it, and so we ignore it. Okay, but on a fun note, first of all, I have the Seahawks defense as my fantasy football league. In my
fun note, everyone cares.
Okay, so Michael Bennett's on my team. I'm on Michael Bennett's team. I just want everybody to know that. And I'm gonna, even though Martellus Bennett, I don't think he's drafted. I'm going to go draft him. I'm going to go pick him up. Anyway, that's his brother. Okay, no, the fun note is the poll from yesterday. Hillary Clinton lost the general election because of either A, Bernie Sanders, or B, Hillary Clinton. TYTnetwork.com/lost. There's actually there's nearly 10,000 votes on it. I love that people bothered to vote. Bernie Sanders is now coming in at 2.3%. And Hillary Clinton at 97.7%, which coincidentally is the exact opposite of how the mainstream media is reacting to it. They're like, well, I didn't even point this out. JR said it off air. In that CNN segment I showed you earlier in the show, Gloria Borger's like, well, it's not all Bernie's fault. So I guess maybe like it's just 97.7% Bernie's fault that Hillary lost.
Man, we're doing a real bad job acting as a propaganda arm for Hillary, aren't we?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I must have missed that memo. Yeah. All right, what's next, Hannah?
All right. Members of the Mexican Red Cross have traveled to Texas to help with the relief efforts for victims of Hurricane Harvey. Now, even though there are questionable tensions between the United States and Mexico over Donald Trump's proposed wall policy, there are officials in Mexico who feel that it is their obligation and responsibility to lend a helping hand and show solitude with the victims of Hurricane Harvey. Now, one of the Mexican Red Cross volunteers said the following: "We all know that there are some agreements and disagreements between governments, but for the Mexican Red Cross and the volunteers from the Mexican Red Cross, we are more than glad to be helpful and do some stuff to help people," which is strange because I thought Mexico only sends criminals and rapists, but I guess in this case they send people that actually help Americans. Now, some 25 trailers were being prepared with rice, beans, coffee, and chocolate, along with 300 beds, 9 generators, mobile kitchens, telecommunications equipment, and personnel, including paramedics and doctors. And that's according to a statement by Mexico's foreign ministry. Mexico is ready to help those affected by Harvey. It's a demonstration of our neighborliness, a show of solidarity, and that's according to one official in Mexico, Carlos Sada, who is the deputy foreign minister for North America. So this is obviously very welcome by people who have suffered in Texas as a result of the hurricane. And we might actually need even more help from Mexico, considering the fact that Hurricane Irma is expected to hit South Florida in coming days. And it is currently a Category 5 storm. But by the time it hits Florida, it is alleged that it'll be a Category 4. It's a nightmare. We're dealing with severe weather conditions. People are scared, they're panicking. There are people who are homeless right now as a result. And so any help we can get is of course appreciated.
All right, some context here. Does Mexico help other countries that are in need too? Yes. Do we help other countries that are in need? Yes, we do that a lot. And so and credit to us for that. That's decent of us to do that. So I know what some right-wingers will say. They'll say, oh, it's just a PR stunt. They're just doing this because of Trump. Except, no, they've done this every time, including Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. They sent in a lot of help, and it was actually the first time that Mexican armed forces had been deployed, in this case, in Texas, since 1846, okay? But in this case, they've sent that in. Oh no, I shouldn't have said that. Now the right wing's like, oh no, the Mexicans are taking over. That's exactly why they're here. No, they helped during Hurricane Katrina and it was greatly appreciated, along with many other countries. And they're helping in this case. Now, but that's exactly our point. It's insane to think that they're only sending criminals and rapists, and anyone with 2 bits of sense should know that. But look, there's a teary-eyed refugee woman in Houston, and she was really moved by the offer of assistance from Mexico because, boy, she really needed it. And she now realizes that it was wrong to try to shut out Mexicans.
I have her statement because it really stood out to me. She's in her 60s. Look, I don't know what her political identity is, so I don't want to speculate on that. But she did say, we don't have time right now to put up borders and block Mexico. We need to come, all of us together, and work together. And I like that she made that statement because it's true, right? You hear these people who are talking about America first and anyone who doesn't want America first and doesn't want to isolate all of our allies or just globalists. No, but we need help. Like we need other countries, we need allies, right? And when it comes to these types of humanitarian efforts, of course they're welcome. Of course we want their help and other countries want our help. And that's not to say that, we basically give a middle finger to American citizens and give all this foreign aid to other countries, right? But it's just interesting that when it comes to Mexico, for some reason the right wing only looks at the bad stuff, right? And by the way, they just completely generalize about the entire Mexican population, about Mexican immigrants, about what they actually contribute or don't contribute to society. It's like they turn a complete blind eye to all the good things that come from our southern neighbor.
Yeah, and whether it applies to this particular woman or not, I just want all of you to, I don't think I'm asking for much, to empathize with other people and look at the whole context without it having to actually apply to you personally.
Exactly.
Like, so every once in a while there'll be, in this case, right-wingers, in the other examples that we've listed, like Rick Santorum, he wanted to limit medical damages, and then his wife had medical damages, and he didn't want to abide by his own limits. And he said, but that's my wife. Don't wait for it to be your wife or you before you say, hey, maybe people are really hurt in situation X or Y or Z, or maybe there's really decent people from those people that I consider the others. Just open up your mind for a second and realize that maybe, just maybe, we're all human. Right. I mean, literally, Ralph Peters from Fox News wrote an article today saying other people's lives don't matter as much as ours. And he thinks it's the intellectual elite who thinks that human life is precious.
What?
Yeah, he said, who cares if we kill 1 million North Koreans?
Well,
there's just some folks are so bad. And my God, 222, if anyone that he knows ever had to, was in a war where they got nuked, he's saying we should nuke North Korea, right?
What a moron. Like, I know some of you guys get upset when I use words like that because it's a personal attack, yada, yada. But really, I mean, is that not a moronic thing to say or to support? I mean, do you not think for half a second about the ramifications of doing something like that? Not only are you killing all of these innocent North Koreans who have no say over the craziness of Kim Jong-un, but you're also affecting our allies. You're leading to potential unrest in that part of the world that could impact other countries. I mean, doesn't think about the ripple effect, doesn't think about the domino effect, doesn't think about all the innocent lives, or actually he does think about the innocent lives that'll be lost, but he doesn't care about that. He's a moron. The fact that he even has a platform to share that moronic idea, an idea that my college students would be educated enough to not make, right? Like, how dumb is that person? He's dumb. I know it's a personal attack, but you can't call it anything else. That's dumb. He hasn't even thought it through.
What's the only thing worse is Rupert Murdoch, who hires him to write stuff like that.
Right, of course, because Rupert Murdoch loves moronic people.
Yeah, because Murdoch's not stupid, but he likes war and he profits from it. So that's why he hires immoral monsters like Ralph Peters. All right, let's do the next story.
All right. A mayoral candidate in Charlotte, North Carolina, boasted about the fact that she is white as one of her top qualifications for getting elected. Now, luckily, she's pretty low in the polls and is not likely to get elected. But here is Kimberly Page Barnett. And in a Facebook post, she said, "Vote for me, Republican and smart, white, traditional." Apparently not smart enough to know proper grammar, but that's okay. That's okay. So she thinks being white is one of the top qualifications that she has. Now, she also made some statements in regard to low-income individuals living in Charlotte who might need some help. And she said, I don't think we should encourage more lower-income people to come to Charlotte. We should attract high-income people. So you kind of get a sense of what kind of person Kimberly is. Now,
that's a very sophisticated line of thinking. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, she's smart and white.
Oh, well, that's a twofer.
Okay. Now, the North Carolina GOP released a statement condemning her, but even in their statement condemning her, they couldn't help but get political and place blame on a Democrat in that state. Okay, so let's hear from Robin Hayes, who is the chairman of the North Carolina GOP. Any suggestion that a candidate is more or less qualified for political office based on their skin color alone is offensive to North Carolina Republicans, and we condemn it. This type of suggestion has no place in our public discourse. So that portion of the statement is fine. And then it continues on with violent confrontations in the streets under Mayor Roberts, who is a Democrat, we have seen the dangers to public safety when a Charlotte mayor fails the leadership test of bringing all people together. What are you talking? Okay, you are making a statement in regard to something disgusting that a mayoral candidate who's a Republican made. Okay, just leave it at that. Leave the politics out of it. I get it, you want to jab the Democrat, but the Democrat in this case didn't have anything to do with the statement that the Republican made on her Facebook page. So why don't you condemn that and move on?
Look, I was going to give the North Carolina GOP credit. At least they're just disowning her and saying that it was the wrong thing to say. Okay, credit where credit is due, so she doesn't speak for all Republicans. But they can't help themselves, right? So, okay, our person might be racist, but we really hate the Democratic mayor. Dude, just do that in another press release. We get it that you're running against them. That's totally fine. You don't have to disarm for the whole campaign. Just simple. Don't point out your race while running. That's it. We're done with it, right? But she's not very smart. I don't know if you can tell. So I thought for a second that maybe she didn't mean it. But then you think about it, and she put white traditional.
No, she meant
No, you know what she meant. And unfortunately, that's the state of some folks in the GOP these days. All right, we got to run the Myanmar story for the online folks when we return.
Did you hear what I said? I said, come here. Come here, Daddy.
All right, back on TYT. First, a super sad story, then a super funny story, only on TYT. And then after that, we'll do the post game. All right, what's up, Anna?
All right. There is currently civil unrest in Myanmar, specifically regarding an ethnic Muslim minority in the region that is referred to as the Rohingya. Now, it's devastating because the persecution that they faced has gotten so bad that they are fleeing the country as refugees and entering Bangladesh, hoping to find some refuge there. In fact, over the last 10 days, hundreds of thousands of people have fled. About 125,000 is the lower estimate that we're seeing in reports right now. The latest violence in Myanmar's northwestern Rakhine state began on August 25th when Rohingya insurgents attacked dozens of police posts and an army base. The ensuing clashes and a military counteroffensive have killed at least 400 people and triggered the exodus of villagers to Bangladesh. Now, to give you a little bit of a backstory, the Rohingya Muslims are not given the same rights as the majority of people that live in Myanmar. The majority are Buddhist, and they don't consider the Rohingya Muslims citizens. And again, they are not given the same rights. They're in fact considered illegal. They're not even allowed to be there. And so since they have been treated unfairly, in many cases, their villages have been burnt down, women have been raped, children have faced brutal violence. Some of the insurgents have retaliated against these police posts that belong to the Buddhist community. And the counteroffensive, of course, has used disproportionate force, and they do target innocent individuals, and as a result, they're fleeing the country. It's really bad. Now, Malaysia believes that the matter of sustained violence and discrimination against the Rohingyas should be elevated to a higher international forum, and that's according to the Malaysian foreign minister. And there are other politicians in other countries that are speaking out because they want more attention brought and they want more action taken, especially by the leader of Myanmar. Now, Turkey's president Erdogan had a statement as well. He has said that the violence against the Rohingya Muslims constituted genocide, and told Suu Kyi, who is the leader of Myanmar, that the violence was of deep concern to the Muslim world, and he was sending his foreign minister to Bangladesh.
Now, how is that for irony?
It could not be more ironic coming from the Turkish president. Funny that he considers that genocide. Anyway.
Okay, so.
And it is genocide, by the way, just to be clear, but he's a little bit of a hypocrite.
Yeah, they targeted an ethnic minority and marched them out of the country. What does that sound like? So look, I'm glad that Erdogan is trying to fight for the Rohingya Muslims, and we all should, to make sure that they are not treated in this brutal way. But the temerity of him to mention the word genocide when Turkey doesn't recognize the Armenian genocide, where an ethnic minority was targeted and driven out of the country, that's an irony too ridiculous for him to bring out. But look, on to many of the points in this story. So first off, the lack of humanity that we show towards each other so consistently is, of course, very depressing, and it is unfortunately popular in Myanmar to do this, and they have a leader who led a democratic movement and who was, lauded the worldwide for her efforts to topple the authoritarian government in Myanmar, and she sits largely silent as an ethnic minority, in this case Muslims, are being butchered. So it's not just the Muslims who are fleeing that are saying this. By the way, just like in the case of the Armenian genocide, why do we think they fled? They just decided to 125,000 people in this case just decided to get up one morning and run towards the border. No, they're running for their lives. And even if you didn't believe them because there's something wrong with you, all of the human rights groups that are monitoring Myanmar say that is in fact exactly what's happening. Satellite imagery that Human Rights Watch has seen shows 700 buildings burnt down in one village alone. And there are reports that they're putting the Muslim civilians into huts and buildings and then burning the buildings down with the people still inside. There's a report of a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old who had their heads chopped off. So look, the world is outraged when ISIS does this to ethnic minorities, and they should be. And the whole world has gone to war against ISIS. Now, in this case, it happens to be the Muslims who are the minorities and the victims. And we all largely sit idly by and do nothing. So as horribly ironic as Erdogan's comments are, at least he's offering assistance and financial help to Bangladesh, who's now taken, since the conflict originally began, apparently about 400,000 refugees. I don't know if you know this, Bangladesh is not in great economic shape. For them to do that is, they should receive all the credit in the world, and we should all be helping Bangladesh and trying to make sure that we direct Myanmar in the right direction, which is to say, look, there's going to be, at a minimum, economic consequences if you don't stop what other human rights organizations, including Fortify Rights and others, are saying is a pogrom that's happening right in front of our eyes. So, unfortunately, inhumanity to other people is not an easy problem to solve. So some people want to say, oh, it's easy, only the Muslims do it. They are inherently this way, or their texts cannot be interpreted in any other way, so it's just them, and they're the ones who need reform, etc. And in fact, the example of the peaceful religion that is most often used is Buddhism. They say, well, the Buddhists aren't violent like the Muslims, so it's obviously the Muslim religion that's the problem. Well, here we have Buddhists chopping kids' heads off and burning them alive. Does that mean because Buddhists are inherently worse people, or Buddhism is an inherently worse religion? Of course not. But this is what happens when minorities are targeted and attacked. And so as a species, we have got to find a way to end this. Look, I have a couple of suggestions. One is we gotta stop separating one another based on race, religion, and all these other external factors. Religion is not the only factor, but it is among the factors. If there was not Muslims and Buddhists, people wouldn't be dying there, likely, or they'd find a different reason. But whatever the reason is, it's because people got separated to us and them. And whenever that happens, massacres are quick to follow. And this is just the latest one. We've got to get these people help immediately. And God bless the people of Bangladesh who are helping.
We had a lighter story to follow up, and I just don't feel right covering it. So we'll save it for tomorrow if that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Sorry, guys. It's a very, very heavy story, obviously, but in heavy times. So let's take a break here, and for the members, we'll come back and I'll tell you the controversy I had in law school when I was a conservative, as I promised you, and then yeah, well, more stuff too, but let's just leave it alone. TYTnetwork.com/join to get the postgame. Okay, bye-bye.